All right, so should you share your sexual history with your partner? Hmm. It's a question I bet we've all thought about at some point.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it seems like it's really on your mind based on this Truths and Secrets episode you sent
For
us.
sure. It definitely got me thinking.
Yeah, well, this episode is perfect for our deep dive. It features two relationship experts kind of going head to head with totally different
Oh,
perspectives.
really?
Yeah, like two sides of the same coin. One's all about being totally open and honest, and the other one's more about respecting boundaries and how comfortable people feel.
Okay, I'm already intrigued. So who are these experts? What do they say?
Well, first up is Dr. Lisa. She's a sex therapist, and she thinks that being open about past relationships can actually make couples closer.
Hmm. Yeah.
She thinks that when you know each other's past, you can set better boundaries, and that can lead to a happier relationship.
Okay, I get that. But isn't there a time and a place for these conversations? Like, would you really spill all on a first date?
No way. And Dr. Lisa agrees, timing is key. What might be okay later on when you're really committed is probably way too much information early on.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's all about reading the room and knowing when to bring things up. What about the other expert? What's their take?
All right, so the second guest is Alex. They're a relationship coach, and they have a slightly different view. They get that honesty is important, but they don't think there's a one-size-fits-all approach to talking about your past.
So not every couple needs to be an open book.
Exactly. Alex thinks that for some couples, keeping some things private is actually healthier, respecting each other's comfort zones. They say that forcing someone to share when they're not ready can break down trust and do more harm than good.
Wow, that's a good point.
Mm.
So how do you find that balance then? It seems like you're always walking on eggshells, figuring out what to say and what not to say.
It's tough, right? But both Dr. Lisa and Alex agree that communication is key. And it's not just about talking, it's about really listening to each other. You need to make a space where both people feel safe to talk about their feelings and needs and respect each other's boundaries.
It definitely sounds like there's a lot to think about.
There is, but I think this episode gives some really practical advice that can help you decide what to do.
So what kind of advice does this episode give? What are some key takeaways?
Well, one of the first things they talk about is context. It's not about making a list of all your past relationships and telling your partner everything.
Right, you're not writing your autobiography.
Exactly. It's more about figuring out what's important for your partner to know right now. Like what will help them understand you better in your current relationship.
So less about confessing every little thing and more about choosing what information is actually relevant.
Yeah. And they even suggest a question you can ask yourself. Is this something my partner needs to know to build trust and intimacy? Or is it something that might actually hurt them?
That's a really good question. I like that. It makes you really think about the impact of what you might share. But what about health stuff? Like if you have an STI or something from your past that could affect your partner's health, shouldn't you always share those things?
Oh, absolutely. They talk about that specifically. Both experts agree that you have to be transparent when it comes to health. It's about being responsible for yourself and your partner.
Yeah.
But they also say you need to be prepared emotionally. It's not just about blurting things out. It's about talking about it sensitively and being supportive.
Yeah, those conversations can be really tough. It takes a lot of courage to be open about those things.
It does. And that's why creating that safe space we talked about is so important. Coming to the conversation with empathy, understanding that both of you might be feeling vulnerable.
Okay, so safe space is key, but how do you actually do that? Like, how do you start those conversations?
Well, they suggest setting some ground rules, like agreeing not to interrupt each other and using I statements so you can express your feelings without blaming anyone.
So making sure you're both heard and respected.
Right. And it's also important to validate each other's feelings, even if you don't agree with them. Just acknowledging that they're feeling that way.
Those are really helpful tips.
Mm-hmm.
But even with all that good intention, isn't there a risk that sharing your past could make your partner jealous or insecure?
Yeah, that's a real concern. And the episode definitely acknowledges that even if you're coming from a good place, some things you share could end up hurting your partner.
So how do you find that balance between being honest and protecting your partner's feelings?
It goes back to that question we talked about. Is this something my partner really needs to know? Sometimes it's better not to say something if it's just going to cause pain or worry.
I'm starting to see how it's not just a simple yes or no decision.
Hmm.
It's much more complicated than that. You have to really think things through and be open with each other.
Definitely. It's about finding that balance between honesty, respect, and being sensitive to each other's feelings.
Yeah.
And that balance is going to look different for every couple.
Right. What works for one couple might not work for another. What if you and your partner have totally different ideas about what should be shared and what should be kept private.
Well, that's where culture comes in. Remember how we were talking about that earlier?
Yeah.
The episode points out that how we feel about sexual history is shaped by our culture.
Mm.
Our values, our beliefs, even our religion. What might be normal in one culture could be totally unacceptable in another.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
So if you and your partner come from different backgrounds, that can make things even more complicated.
it can. And it means you need to be even more careful and understanding. Recognizing that your partner might have different values, and that's okay.
Right. It's about respecting those differences and figuring out how to deal with them together. But how do you even begin to bridge that gap?
It all comes back to communication. Being willing to have those tough conversations, even when they're uncomfortable. Listening to each other, trying to see where the other person is coming from.
So it's not just about giving information. It's about making a space where you can both share how you feel, what you're worried about.
Right, and it's not a one-time thing. It's something you keep doing as your relationship grows and changes.
So it takes patience and compromise.
It does. But the episode makes a good point. They say that if you work through these things together, you can build a relationship based on real trust and intimacy and understanding.
I like that. It's not about finding the right answer. It's about going through the process together and coming out stronger on the other side.
Yeah. And that leads to the last big takeaway from the episode. I think it sums up everything really well.
Okay, I'm all ears. What is it?
They ask this question at the end. It's pretty thought-provoking. What parts of your past are important for your partner to know so you can build trust and understanding, and what things are better left unsaid?
Wow, that's deep. It really gets you thinking. It's not just about choosing between telling everything or keeping everything secret. It's about finding that middle ground.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes you think about your reasons for sharing and what effect it might have. It's not about following some rule. It's about making choices that are right for you and your partner.
It sounds like they're encouraging us to really think for ourselves and not just follow some script.
They are, and that's what I like about this episode. It doesn't give you all the answers. It gives you the power to make your own decisions.
And it's less about finding the perfect solution and more about figuring things out together with your partner.
Exactly. Relationships are a journey, not a destination. And sometimes that journey takes you through rough waters. But if you're open with each other and you both want to understand each other, you can get through those challenges and end up stronger.
I love that analogy. It really captures what we've been talking about. But before we wrap up, is there any final advice they give to help people start this journey?
They do. They end on a lighter note, reminding us that this is just the beginning. Keep talking to your partner and remember that respectful communication is how you navigate these tricky waters.
So approach these conversations with curiosity and a willingness to learn and grow together.
Yeah, it's about understanding that there's no right way to be in a relationship. It's about finding what works for you and your partner and building a connection that feels real and fulfilling.
That's great. I love that message. It's so hopeful and empowering. But before we go, I feel like you have one last piece of wisdom to share with our listener, something to really make them think about this on a deeper level.
That's a really interesting point. It's like those experiences become part of us, whether we realize it or not.
Right. And sometimes talking about those things in a safe space with someone you trust can be really freeing. It can help you understand why you react the way you do in certain situations or communicate better with your partner. And that can make your relationship so much stronger.
So it's about owning your past and using it to build a better future.
Exactly. It's not about pretending your past didn't happen. It's about accepting it, learning from it, and using it to grow in a healthy way.
So like using your past as a stepping stone instead of letting it trip you up?
Yeah, and when you share those lessons with your partner in a way that feels right, it can bring you closer and create a deeper connection.
It's not just about sharing facts. It's about being vulnerable. Letting your partner see the real you, even the parts you're not proud of.
And when you do that, you can see your partner more fully, too. You understand them better and appreciate everything they've been through.
It's like realizing that we're all just trying to figure things out. You know,
Yeah.
we're all a work in progress.
Yeah. And when you embrace that journey together with an open heart and an open mind, you can create something really special.
This deep dive has been amazing. We started with a simple question about sharing your sexual history, but we've ended up talking about so much more. Trust, intimacy, vulnerability, the power of communication.
And I hope we've given you some helpful tools and things to think about as you navigate this part of your relationship.
No easy answers, but definitely a lot to think about.
Yeah.
And a reminder that we can build relationships that are based on honesty, understanding, and a willingness to grow together.
And remember, communication is key. Keep talking to each other. And don't be afraid to really connect with your partner on a deeper level.
Well said. Well, it's time for us to wrap things up. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into relationships.
Until next time.
See ya.